And I will officially now shut up.
Well, with my introduction for Ursula, she was dead on. Welcome to our talk. Tonight we're going to talk about the food that we eat, and food combined with fitness too. So how this idea of this talk came from, it's always funny how these brainchilds happen. Linda and I were talking, and Linda started a conversation, and she said something to the effect of, we should split, and then she stopped. She was going to say something else, and I said, we should split the talk up, and then I don't have to do it all. And that's where it all came from. He's like, I'm always trying to finish your sentence.
And I'm not going to talk ever.
And I said, she might have said we're going to split up, so I jumped in there. Keep talking. Well, I don't know what she was going to say. But the good news is I got out of 3/4 of the talk. So I think we're going to be able to run this. Everyone's going through their slides. We have different perspectives about what's going on when it comes to a dietary point of view. So I'll rip through mine, Linda will go next, and then it gets Adam, and then Mitch will go through there. But the theme tonight that I want you to think about is, it's not enough in our life to know what's right. It's know what's right and what's wrong. Because we all know what's right and what's wrong when it comes to our lifestyle, our eating, our exercise, even the world around us. We know what's right, and it's easy to point out what's wrong. But it's about how are we going to change that? And it's probably not going to be through things like research. People love research. They want to be like, I'm the bad sugar guy. I'm going to talk about how sugar is bad for you. So I'm the real bad guy, and I'm talking about this tonight. And we all know sugar is bad. We don't need another study that says sugar is bad. What we need is leadership. We need people to say, I'm not going to buy that product. I'm not going to do that. When we look at breakfast cereal, there's been a lot written lately on the breakfast cereals. If you're not buying an organic breakfast cereal, it's got Roundup sprayed on it. It's got glyphosate sprayed on it, which is horrible for human consumption. So this is what they're spraying all the crops with. If all of us decided to stop buying Cheerios, then they'd make the Cheerios, they'd sit on the shelf, and they'd go, wow, no one's buying them. Let's not make them anymore. You see how that? They wouldn't go on sale, and we wouldn't buy cereal with a pesticide sprayed on it. We'd just say, you know what? I'd rather buy something without that sprayed there. And the people that make it, they would make it, because their job is to make money, right? So they don't really care about your health, because they don't really worry about these things. I want you to think about being a leader and changing the way other people think, so that they're not putting something in their body that we know is bad for them. So maximize living, we always talk about the 5 essentials of maximize living. All of these things are essential for your health. Today, a lot of our talk is going to be about nutrition, but it's also the interplay between nutrition and nutrition with exercise, because we're going to show you some things that if you're exercising, if you do that with the nutrition that we're going to talk about, you'll get more advantages out of it. You'll get a better payoff by doing those things. So exercise isn't fun, but you may as well get the most out of it. Today, by the time an average child in a developing country turns 8, they will have consumed more sugar than a person who lived 100 years ago, their entire life. This is how much sugar are going into the young children. And people go, yeah, but they're thin. They're not going to be thin for long. You can't keep putting sugar. And if it's not sugar, it's high fructose corn syrup, which is an even worse form of sugar. And then people say, well, we're using Gatorade, G2, it's got sucralose. Sucralose isn't even real, it's a chemical. They made it sound like sugar because they're trying to trick you. So you have to understand how to read labels. And we all know the processed food. You know, you look at this cupcake world that we're in, people are eating processed food. So if you're eating processed food, it's bad for you. So you just have to acknowledge that. The things that Linda has made today, they're homemade things. I think you're going to enjoy them. So there are healthy choices. We also have some energy bars that we've picked up. So you have at least one for everyone to take home. And these are protein bars with 0 sugar in them. They're GMO free. What else are they? They're kosher. They're kosher. Well, someone's putting that kind of effort into it. And they're 0 sugar. So once again, this would be a healthier choice. Where did Linda find them? She found them up at Bodie's at a ridiculously stupid price, so we bought enough for everyone. This is what we have to avoid. All of these people are trying to convince us that their products are good for you. Their products aren't good for you. So those are all the little brands that you're buying, the Oreos, the cereals in there. And these are the same companies. You're buying foods from companies that don't really care about you. All right? So this is why I don't want you to start your day with cereal. I'd rather have you start your day with eggs. So there's healthier ways to start your days. It's just this grain world. It's not going to work. The reason why this slide's in here is our fall talk series. I'm going to be doing, my first talk is going to be on the dangers of opioids. We're seeing all sorts in our environment, and they call them safe injection sites. It's like, really?
Oh.
So what makes it safe again? They don't even like injection, they call it consumption. Do you notice they changed the words? Because we realize that that's not. You can't put injectable things in your body that are bad for you and call them safe. So we're going to talk about these things. But when you look at the opioids, about 1 in 500 people taking them will die from toxicity. That's just the toxicity. You look down here. Opioids interfere with the breathing in multiple dangerous ways, often leading to death. That's also killing you. So it's not 1 in 500 people who are dying of opioids. It's probably 1 in 100, or 1 in 80, or 1 in 90. They say 25% of people that start taking these products, they become addicted. So this is why we're trying to make sure people understand that back pain can turn into something like this, and that's why we have to make sure our friends don't get on these drugs. The OHIP 25 plan that the previous government came up with to try to give you free drugs, because everyone wants free drugs nowadays for some crazy way. That now it's drugs for people under the age of 25, fentanyl, Oxycontin, they're on that list of free drugs. So your 16-year-old could go to your doctor, paint a really good story, and your doctor could write them a prescription and you wouldn't even know about it. Where if they were on your benefit plan, you would have known about it, wouldn't you? Because you're paying for that. So I look at some of the things that the government is doing to us, and it's certainly not something that's good for us. Now your daughter, your 14-year-old child, can get on birth control and you don't know. You know, wouldn't it be nice if you had a conversation and you were involved in a process? But when a government supersedes that, I have a problem with that. So, you know, we hear about Doug Ford has a buck of beer. That's okay. If someone wants to go drink $1 beer, let them go drink $1 beer. If they want to tailgate, go tailgate. At least there's more freedom in our world. And he's not doing that to take away from the teachers or healthcare. They're two separate issues. Just let them go. Don't get caught in he's doing this instead of that. These politicians, they can do probably a couple things at the same time. Let's give them a break. They can probably pull that off. But we get into these battles that aren't good for you. They're bad for you, and you worry about them all the time. But these are real things. The other talks we're going to do this fall, one is called Brain Fit. We're going to talk about Alzheimer's, dementia. We're going to talk about that because that's a very serious thing that affects way too many people. And the last talk is on detoxing the body. So those will be our 3 talks this fall. We still have one more event this summer. That's June 10th. That is our barbecue. On the barbecue night, Linda and I will make the burgers. There'll be organic burgers, there'll be yam burgers, there'll be salmon burgers, there'll be all sorts of different types of burgers that we will make. Linda will make some grain-free buns so that you have some options so you can avoid your grains. And then you will be bringing the side dishes. So as you know, it's a potluck dinner, and we do this every June, and everyone seems to like that. So that's the one that we enjoy doing.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to...
Go ahead.
Okay, so just on the opioid drug, there was an article released by the Waterloo Regional Police earlier this month, and so in this region alone, in Waterloo Region, there were 75 overdoses in January, 100 overdoses in February, and 90 in March. And 20 of those actually resulted in fatalities. So it's happening here in our very city. So it's not just a problem abroad or in other regions of Canada. It's pretty rampant here in Waterloo region. So
That's
yeah,
sad.
yeah, it's
That's
just
really sad.
no problem.
I'm going to talk about trends, so the trends that are happening in the food industry and what people are reading and what people are thinking of doing these days. Intermittent fasting, not really a trend, but it has become very trendy over the last number of years. Particularly, I was watching TV right before the Oscars, and they were talking about all the celebrities, and they were all doing keto diets and fasting so that they could look great that evening. So, first of all, it's not really a diet, and you're not really starving yourself. A lot of people have that misconception. It's been around for a long time. People have done it for centuries, and they've normally done it for religious purposes and also for healing. So don't be afraid to try it. It really does have some benefits. It's not working. I'm not very good at this, you can tell. So,
Better than me.
unlimited coffee, these are the rules to do while you're doing your fast. So unlimited coffee, black tea, small amounts of milk is okay, or cream, but no sugar during the fasting times. To benefit, it has to be at least 14 hours, but you choose the hours, which is good. And you can either do alternate days, maybe you can do 5 days a week that you're doing it, 2 days a week you don't, or you just maybe pick 1 or 2 days a week that you want to do it. So that's the beauty of this type of intermittent fasting. But the benefits are significant. Number 1, it's free. Number 2, it's flexible and convenient. You pick the time, you pick the date. It increases your metabolism by up to 14%. When you also do it, you tend to lose less lean muscle mass than if you were to do a regular diet. And also, it can actually help regulate your insulin. The other benefits, it reduces your oxidative stress and inflammation. It can decrease your blood pressure, your bad cholesterol. It can help with that, and it can also prevent heart disease. It can increase your human growth hormone, which is really important. And as we get older, it makes it much more difficult for us to do that, so it will actually intensify that process. And here are the no's. It's not for if you're pregnant, if you have some eating disorders, they don't suggest that you try that, and also too, if you have some major issues being a diabetic, consult your doctor also too if you have low blood pressure. So, one other thing that when you're going out to the grocery stores or when you see on TV, people are always talking about turmeric. Is everybody turmeric? And that is really what it is. It's an adaptogen. So adaptogens are things that have been around for centuries. Basically, it's been used by the Chinese and it's been used by the Indians. And it does exactly what we're talking about. It adapts your hormones. So if something in your hormone levels are too high, it will take it down. If something is too low, it takes it up. But what it never does, if it's taking it up, it won't take it up beyond where it's supposed to be taking up. So it's a really interesting type of plant or herb that can really assist. It doesn't have, it's not as though you would take it today and get the benefit of tomorrow. It's something that will happen progressively, but so if you do want to start doing this type of thing, you have to understand that it's not going to be an instantaneous result that a lot of people always want when they're doing things. But one good thing about it is that, oops, I went past. One good thing about it too, it's non-toxic. So you never will be hurt by it. So we talk about turmeric, that's one of them. It can decrease depression. It's an anti-inflammatory. It can also help with cancer. Ashwagandha, it can increase your energy, your endurance. It can decrease your cortisol when it's too high. Maca root, it's good for increasing your libido and balancing your hormones. And you can see there's a whole other list. So if you're interested, just put that onto your Google site, put in adaptogens. You can find all types of different ones and decide which one might be right for you if you do want to try it. But for example, don't go to the grocery store and buy turmeric off the spice rack. Get yourself something from a health store that will most likely be organic and grown properly, because you don't know what's actually, a lot of the spices that we buy are irradiated, so they're not going to have the same type of benefits. So I always go to Winners and I just go into the health section. I can usually get something that's quite affordable there if I'm looking for it for our family. So. Gut health, that's another thing that we see. You go to the store, buy this, it's got a prebiotic in it, or buy this and it's got a probiotic in it. We can get a lot of these things just by what we eat. And the whole idea behind it is we want to increase the proper flora, the proper microbes in our body that are good for us, and decrease the bacteria that is bad for us. And we want to seek a proper balance. So again, you can buy fermented foods. It replenishes your microbiome, and that's all the things that we're using: the sauerkraut, the miso, the kombucha. A couple of you have been here. Like, are you still making kombucha? Yeah. So I mean, there's certain things you can get hooked on, and it's really easy to make, and you can consume it at home, and you can increase your gut flora. The other thing is bone broth. That's something that we've talked about before. It's really good to because of the amino acids and the collagen. It can really help your stomach, and especially if you've been in situations where you've had a lot of gut issues. The omega-3 foods, they're also good for inflammation. And dietary fiber, those are your prebiotics. So the idea is your body doesn't digest it, it goes into your bowels, and it's actually what will start to feed your probiotics. So if you do a good combination of that, you don't necessarily always have to take and buy all these specially infused food packages that always carry these things, and that also is more expensive to do. And plant-based eating. So that's a new trendy term that's been coming out lately, and really all that is vegan or vegetarian. And there's a lot of different restaurants that are opening up, and that's what they're carrying. Even the fast food places are carrying plant-based. But these plant-based products, what they have, they'll be on a regular white bun with all the stuff that you're not supposed to eat anyway. So you're not necessarily eating that well if you're going to do that. The caveat of being on one of these diets, a vegetarian vegan diet, I'm not trying to say you shouldn't be on it, but there is one thing that you have to remember, there's never been a society yet in history that is based solely on vegan or vegetarianism. What they will do is, they will only end up being that way if there is no animal protein source. And that doesn't mean that it's something that you should never do, but amino acids are really important. There's 20 amino acids, and some are nutritional based, and some our body can synthesize. So you need this to build your body. Mitch is going to have a slide up later that will show that. But the problem is, you need to get these 9 amino acids from food. Animal protein has all 9 together. So if you choose to do a vegetarian lifestyle, you have to make sure that when you're picking your plant sources, they're not all going to have all the amino acids. So you have to know which ones to combine so that you can get all those essential amino acids into your body. And the other thing is that your absorption is much slower with plant-based, so the body doesn't readily absorb it the same way as what you would with a protein source. And the final thing is, there's a lot of talk nowadays with the cannabis and the alcohol or edibles. So the government will decide that certain things are made available. So it's up to you as a consumer to make informed choices. We don't really know, a lot of these things haven't been studied, but this is becoming the new craze. So we just threw this up here so that you can think about it and just have some better understanding before you go out and possibly decide that you want to consume these things, and think about it down the road. And are you okay? Oh, you are. Okay.
Hit the button, no.
Okay. See, I'm just
Yeah, Linda, remember when we were at the Cal Jam and Zach Bush was speaking, and he was talking about people using the probiotics. So this is a medical doctor in the States. It's in a healthy world. He's not like the other medical doctors. And he was showing a study that was done on, you know how people always, they'll end up on antibiotics and then they'll start taking probiotics afterwards. He shows a study that says that actually slowed the process down. It was better to not do that. So we're told all sorts of things by scientists that this is what we should do. And then he goes up there and shows a study and says, well, first they've never done it. Here's the only study that's done it. And it shows you that when you put the probiotics in there after you've been on antibiotics, your outcome was actually worse. It took your body longer to fix the problem than you just doing what you were supposed to do. So this is the world that we live in, where people are always telling you that they know what they're talking about. And the reality is, those are the researchers. It's not always about research, it's about common sense. If you're not putting too much sugar in your body, you're going to be better off. If you're exercising, if your mind, the way you think is clearer, you're not going to let the world affect you the same way. So we're not going to get negative, we're going to be positive, and that's what leadership is all about. When something bad happens, we're not going to get beat up by it. And those things happen to all of us in our lives, so you don't have to be perfect. I'm just saying, you have to be aware of that. Now, I'm going to talk a little about the meal plans, the Maximized Living meal plans. There's 2 plans that we predominantly talk about. One's called the core diet, one's called the advanced diet. Now, the core diet is about eating the right meats. So you're going to notice that we have sign-up lists in our office. So there might be a few chickens available, there might not be, so I'll throw that out there. But Linda has found a farmer that will do chickens for us. And we're getting 75 birds in a few weeks. I think maybe it's about a month and a half that they'll be in. And, yeah, and these birds are grain-fed, but they're actually free range. They're
They're free
outside
range.
in the sun, and if they do have to subsidize with any extra food, it's all GMO-free food. So they're not organic, but they're pretty good. They're pretty close to it. When you're buying meat from a grocery store, you have no idea. You don't know, but I can pretty much tell you there's a good chance there's growth hormones and there's a good chance that there's antibiotics, because that's how their model works. They've got these barns with 20,000 birds in them. That's how they do it. These birds run around outside. They get to eat what they're supposed to, and yeah, we do kill the birds and we do eat the birds, but I'll guarantee these are better, healthier birds for you. And then we have a place where we pick up our meat. So we found a way to do this. If you need to get plugged in, talk to us about that, because you need to eat the right meats, whether you're on the core plan or advanced plan. When you go for dinner, we understand that's not going to be the right meat, all right? It's going to be the cheaper meat, and you're paying a whole lot more when you go out. I'm not saying you can't go out, just acknowledge that that's not your best choice that you made that day. Now, on the core plan, we let people have some grains and we let people have some sugar, so you can have fun. So on the weekend, I would say a lot of times we're more on the core because we're going to be doing things like that. But during the week, a lot of times we're pretty much grain-free and sugar-free for a couple days at a time. So we can now go without toast. You know, some days we will have something, other days we won't. Some days we'll have a treat and we'll have some sugar, but you don't have to have this. If you're on the advanced diet, then you're on an advanced diet where you're just not eating any grains or sugars. And that is similar to the keto diet. You will lose a lot of weight, you will feel a whole lot better, and if you've got some hormonal issues or some health issues, you will see some quick advantages with that because you're not throwing toxic substances constantly into your body. So if you stop doing bad things, God designed your body to heal by itself. You just got to remember that. We're not meant to have drugs. Drugs are what people put in their body when they're sick. You are not meant to be sick. Health is your normal software package. 1950s to 2019. Well, a lot's changed with how people eat. We eat more sugar than before. GMO didn't exist, genetically modified organisms. These things didn't exist. All farming was natural back then, or at least it was minimal pesticide. Eating out, that didn't happen, and if you did, you probably went to a diner, which was the healthier food. It wasn't the deep fried things that we're seeing nowadays with all the wrong oils. We didn't have to worry about label readings because there wasn't labels on things, were they? So my suggestion is if you buy things like an apple, you'll notice there's no label on it. See? You don't have to be a real good label reader. You just have to buy things without labels on them. Celery, no label on there. But buy the organic, all right? Because celery is one that they spray a lot of pesticide on. Where do we get that information? The Environmental Working Group. They put it out every year. It's called the Dirty Dozen, the Clean 15. The Environmental Working Group also puts out the 100 best sunscreens. So you can go to this and they've got a list and you can see which ones. And if yours is on like number 99 for the best, buy one from higher on the list. You're going to be far better off. So most people slather these creams all over their body with the thought that they're going to be healthy because they're so afraid of the sun, but they don't even read the chemicals on there. The retinols, the parabens, all these things that we're trying to avoid. And you put them on your body. And if you look around, there's more skin cancer now than ever before. So if we're thinking that we're curing sun cancer or skin cancer, when every year there's more cases of it, and they say, oh, that's from a sunburn when you were 5. It's like, really? I'm supposed to believe that? Like, some of their stories seem unbelievable. And if it happened from a burn when I'm 5, I guess there's really no point in worrying about sunblock anymore, is there? Because it's all fate at this point. Protecting myself from things that happened 50 years ago isn't going to work. It's crazy what people, they sell us on. The times have changed. Las Vegas, and I have 2 Las Vegas stories. I can only tell you one. Now this is the one's a good one. I can't tell you. But this is the old days. My first time I went to Las Vegas, and the whole parallel that we're looking at here is times are different. Sugar is different. Everything is different. I remember the first time I went to Vegas. It was one of those tour things, and I remember the night before that we had to go. We had to get this crazy thing. We had to put our packed bag in the hallway by like 1:30 in the morning. Can you imagine that? That you're in a hotel and you're gonna go put your bag outside of your door, and it's going to be there the next day. So this was back in 1992. You put your bag out there and you walk out the next morning, it's gone. You're going, well, I'm sure someone picked it up. And then you don't even see your bag till you get back to Toronto. And you know, the whole idea is you hope it's all going to work out. There was trust. Those things didn't happen the same way. But my story was kind of interesting, was I packed my bag the night before, and I'm going to preface this as, picture me with boxers. Because the next day I get up and I go to get dressed and I got my cowboy boots, I got my shirts, I got my jacket, and I go, I packed my pants. And my pants are gone. So you're standing there with your cowboy boots. It's like, well, hey guys, I could probably pull this off anyway. So I'll have trouble in Toronto when I get there. I know I'm going to be pulled into secondary. There's no question about that. And thank goodness one of my friends had a pair of track pants. So the track pants and boots didn't really work. Thank God someone had that. But the times were different back then. People ate different. We made different choices. You could leave a bag in the hallway and no one put a bomb in it. And it was crazy when we look at it. And now we've all accepted that sugar is an okay thing. We have to unaccept these things. These things are not acceptable. They're dangerous and they're going to create serious health issues with you. Now, my job as a chiropractor, food is important, but the nervous system has to work right for you to be able to digest food and for your body to heal properly. And if you keep your nervous system working right, you'll be able to digest food the way you're supposed to. It's out of
So I want to start with this quote by Michael Pollan. Michael Pollan, I don't know if many of you have heard of him. He does a lot of research on food and where food comes from. So we actually have some of his books here, so if you're interested, let me know. He's also been in a bunch of movies too, and he started his career because he wanted to find out where food came from. So he went to a grocery store, he picked up a package, and he said, I want to trace back the origins of this food. So he does a lot about factory farming and the industrialization of food, which we see all too much nowadays. So he has a really good quote, it's not food if it arrived through the window of your car. And I take that a step further and say it's also not food if it arrives by a car to your house. Because I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my segment about how these food services, delivery services like Skip the Dishes, Foodora, Uber Eats are kind of taking over, and especially millennials are the #1 consumers on those sites. And it's, I know, it's, unfortunately it looks like they're going to be doing pretty well for a little while. It's a huge industry, worth $1 billion every year. So that's the direction that the food industry is going in right now. All these restaurants are partnering with these delivery services to get people food. They don't have to go anymore. Like, you used to dine out, now you just take out your phone, click on a couple buttons. I see my friends do it. They don't even have to call anyone. You open the app, you click on your order, and it shows up at your door, and that's it. So it's crazy. I've never used it, but it's I see it's convenient for sure, but you're not eating the right foods and you're letting other people cook for you. So yeah, these are just some of the topics I'm going to be touching on: the decline of home cooking and the increase of diseases as a result of that. Just a generation of the food delivery services. So I want to start with a short video by Michael Pollan where he shows a correlation between the decline of home cooking and the increase of diseases. On YouTube first. Oh, muted again, okay. There we go.
It's okay, you're better than I am at this technology.
Yeah, young guys can't use technology. It keeps on getting more and more
You're
advanced,
fine.
and eventually the little kids are going to be teaching us again. It's going to cycle. So,
You want to know the diet for America, the one diet that would work?
yeah.
Oh, food.
As processed food has become more prominent and as fast food has it's really taken over our diets, home cooking is in free fall. We spend 27 minutes on cooking per average and 4 minutes cleaning up. Now, that 4 minutes should tell you something. I mean, what kind of cleaning up can you do in 4 minutes? You can crumple a pizza box and scrape some plates, but you're probably not tackling a pot. What it suggests is even that definition of cooking may be rather diluted. Rates of home cooking have fallen by half since the mid-60s. And it is no coincidence, and in fact the link has been pretty well demonstrated, that as rates of home cooking decline, rates of obesity go up. And if you look around the world, the countries where home cooking is still healthy, that tradition, that practice, have lower rates of obesity. I decided that the best way to encourage people to cook was to remind them what a beautiful, miraculous work it is, practice it is, and that we have been almost brainwashed to think of cooking as drudgery, something we don't have time for, or something we don't have the skills for. We fetishize cooking in our society today. We all watch television shows about these heroic athletic chefs who can do these amazing feats while the clock is ticking down behind them. It looks terrifying. It looks like work best left to professionals. And restaurant cooking has kind of become what we think of as cooking. Of course, that's never been the case. Restaurant cooking is a very specialized activity. And it's not the bar. We're being daunted about cooking, and then you have the industry with marketing messages that are flattering our sense of busyness, implicitly telling us, you don't have time to cook. You're too important. You're a loser if you have time to cook. And that's, this is traditionally how marketing works. You create an anxiety, and then you create a solution. And if corporations can do this, we will let them do this. Well, what about the obesity epidemic? And what about type 2 diabetes? You want to know the diet for America, the one diet that would work? Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself. And there's a real wisdom in that. There really is. It can solve a multitude of problems. It causes some problems too. And we can talk about time and all the impediments to cooking, but it solves the big problem.
Basically, cooking yourself. So, I mean, in my friend group, my brother and I are fortunate because our parents made us cook from a young age. Like back in high school, we were expected to make 1 to 2 meals a week, and we've just still been doing that. So we can make. It's not like we can make anything fancy, but we can make basic food and healthy food, good food, exactly. And in the long run, too, you're gonna be much healthier. You're gonna save a whole lot of money too. Because my friends who think they cook, their idea of cooking is they take out a box of frozen pizza, they put in the oven, and that's cooking to them. It's like that. No, you're just warming up a pre-packaged meal. So I'm going to talk about that later on in my slides about how a lot of the items you find in the supermarkets are just pre-packaged food. It's not even, you're not making food. Like that I mentioned earlier, like you know what an apple is? It's an apple. And you buy these items, but people aren't doing that. People are going to services where they deliver everything chopped up for you, and you mix it up, and it's not cooking. So people's idea, as Michael Pollan pointed out, the idea of cooking is very diluted. The definition's totally changed, and my friends who think they cook, they don't actually cook. They just warm up stuff. So just a few statistics here. So Canadians now spend about 30% of their budget on eating out and consuming prepared meals. So again, prepared meals are like your pizzas and those sorts of things, microwavable oven foods. 54% of Canadians eat out once a week or more, and 40% say they eat out for convenience, don't have time, as mentioned in the video too. They have a bunch of excuses for why they're not cooking. And 3% of people, this is done by a Dalhousie University survey, so that they eat out every single day. So I know a bunch of people do that too, so that might even be higher now. But so for millennials, they likely won't cook. If it wasn't part of their childhood, growing up, if their parents didn't teach them how to cook, they're likely going to be the people who aren't cooking in their adult years, which makes total sense. Like it's easier to teach how to cook at a younger age. Doesn't mean you can't learn how to cook at any time, but that's just the trend. And for kids who grew up in the 80s and 90s, there's a huge emphasis on these microwave and these packaged meals. Like, Kraft is big on them. They're one of the biggest providers of packaged foods, and there's a whole lot of other companies out there too. But again, it's done out of convenience. I think the items you're getting, they're not, the food quality is poor. It's not made by you. And when you let other people cook for you, they're going to put in the wrong salt, sugars, and fats, and quantities that you wouldn't cook with yourself. Had you prepared it. So again, yeah, this is just a video for that same statistic here. And so the question is, why are people cooking less? And there's a few answers to that. The online food services like Foodora, Just Eat, Skip the Dishes, it's becoming rampant. There's so many out there, and they keep on growing, and their revenues are growing, and they have millions of customers every day who are signing on the apps to use their service. That's one big thing. The other thing is, as mentioned in the video too, we're seeing there's about 200 hours every day, weekly, that Canadians see of like Iron Chef and all these shows where we see these professional cooks do all these amazing feats, and they've turned cooking into this skill that is, again, left to professionals. It's not something that an everyday person can do. So that kind of, you watch these shows, it does look scary. These people in the kitchen, they're yelling at each other. It doesn't look, I wouldn't want to cook if I had no idea what cooking was and I thought that's what cooking was. I'd be like, I'm fine with just using my app. I wouldn't want to do that. So that's understandable. And again, it's the whole idea, they create a fear, they create an anxiety, like, time to cook, you can't cook. And then they give you a solution, which is all their food services and everything else. And yeah, so in the 1960s, big supermarkets had about 10,000 items, and it's now exploded to roughly 40,000. So that's a big increase. A lot of that is prepackaged food. Again, it's not that they have more items available, it's just more crappy items. And there's if you look up Michael Pollan on YouTube, he does a really good video on supermarkets and how every aspect of the market is planned out to a T. The beats and the music that they play, the layout of the store too. You'll notice that products like milk and stuff you're getting every day, they're in the back, so you have to go through everything else. They also, the way they put things on the shelf, the sugary cereals are always at eye level. The healthier food's always on a lower shelf, and it's all planned out, every aspect of that store. So and they've paid people, and they have done studies to design it the way they do and the whole idea is they want to sell the most stuff, and it's usually the stuff that's not good for you either. This is just a little visual. This is a sum of the food delivery services that are out there, and I'm sure they're going to keep on growing. It's a very competitive market. Obviously, the biggest ones are Skip Dishes, Just Eat, and Uber Eats. Those are some of the main ones, but I mean, all the other ones are, like, everyone's picking up their own. A lot of restaurants, too, they don't necessarily have a company. They will deliver food themselves now, too. So they're not necessarily relying on these companies for their service. So they're just making it so easy and so accessible that it's no wonder why people are turning to this instead of actually cooking. And yeah, just one last thing I want to touch on. Mentioned it earlier, when you're buying food that isn't cooked by you, there's going to be the wrong salt, sugar, and fat in it, and large quantities. So there's going to be what's called ultra-processed food. So they go through, multiple processes to get to where they are. So some of those they'll do things like extrusion is where they apply high heat and high pressure to get a certain texture. So like when you look at certain things like your breadsticks or croutons or chips like the Cheetos and those sorts of things, they all go through these processes to get a certain texture or look to the food too. And again, they use all sorts of colorings and dyes that there's no place being in our bodies, and it's just more, they look nicer, so it's more appealing and they sell more because of that, and unfortunately they don't really take into consideration our health. So the statistics are that, found a good article about that. So diets high in salt, sugar, and fat are the second leading risk of death in Canada after smoking, and it costs the economy $26 billion annually to deal with fat health, which is scary. And the consumption, again, of these excessive amounts of salt, sugar, fat lead to blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and some forms of cancer. So again, like the takeaway from this is that it's not just convenience, but you're really doing a disservice to your health too, and you're constantly, exactly, you're relying on these companies to give you food. They don't care, they're making it as cheap as they can so that you buy more. Their bottom line is it's their wallet. They don't care about your health, and they'll advertise it in any way you can by, again, appealing to your sense of busyness or your lack of skill when it comes to cooking, and they kind of rope you in. And once you're in, it's, it's so easy to do. That's the scary part. It's a slippery slope when you let someone else prepare all your meals for you. And again, I'm not saying don't eat out. I mean, I go with my friends too. I don't have a perfect diet too. I'll have junk food too, but just do it in moderation. Make sure that 90% of the time you're eating good food that you're sourcing, homemade.
Alright, so my part is on diet and exercise. So a lot of times when we're focusing on our exercise, more so it's geared towards performance, and we kind of put health as the secondary or on the back burner. So you'll see in the corner there a picture of a gross amount of food. That's the amount of food that Michael Phelps would consume. Yeah, it's fueling him. Yeah, he's working out harder than all of us, so he's not gaining the weight. However, in the long run, what's going to happen is it's going to slow him down. He's going to have health deterioration in his gut, ligaments, connective tissue, just because of what he's filling his body with. He doesn't need calories, however, he doesn't need to have 90% of his calories to be carbs. So it's one of those things that when you look at it, it might seem like, oh, we're going to get all this energy and we're going to get those gains from what we're eating, but at the same time, it's like, yes, it might be good in the time, but no, it's not beneficial for your body. So having a meal plan will give you a more optimal health, and you have to look at health and what you're doing, weighing both equally. So for pre-workout meals, some of the things that we want to try to avoid are having heavy proteins. So heavy proteins will break down slower in your body, and then what happens when you are exercising is more of so basically your blood is what's used to transfer all your nutrients, your oxygen when you're exercising. So when you're exercising, if you're exerting your muscle, there's going to be more blood flow to there so that you're able to keep up energy. However, if you have stuff in your food, in your stomach, and you're digesting, there's still blood flow that has to go to your stomach. So you're only limiting your capacity if you're eating heavy foods right before you end up working out. And that's the same concept for having foods that are heavy in fiber. So if you're going to have foods that are heavy in fiber, so let's say you have a big salad right before you go out and run, you might think, oh, I'm making some right choices right now, I'm eating well. You might not be feeling too well during your run because your body's still breaking everything down. But looking at it from a more molecular level, if you were to have a smoothie that was filled with fiber, if you were to have that closer to the time of when you're working out, all the cell walls are broken down and pulverized into smaller amounts, so your body can digest it easier, and then you're able to actually have it pass through your body easier and absorb the energy. So it's not going to affect you as much before you work out. Avoiding things like fast-burning carbohydrates. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard, but if you have white bread, it can actually spike your insulin levels, similar to having a chocolate bar. So you're kind of eating candy, and then it's just a fast sugar rush that you'll get, and then you'll have a crash during your workout. So what you should be doing is having slow-burning carbohydrates. I'll get to that in the next slide. And when you're looking at substances such as a pre-workout, pre-workout is something that a lot of people end up taking before they end up working out. A lot of times it is filled with just a bunch of basically crap. So most pre-workouts, they'll all have one similar ingredient in it that will get you kind of pumped up, and that's caffeine. So caffeine has been proven to work as a pre-workout supplement, and that's what they put into it. But it's the other stuff that they put with it. So when they're putting the artificial sweeteners or additives such as a sweetener, sucralose, that one, it causes damage to your gut, so it destroys good bacteria. So in the long run, when you're having substances such as that, it's going to slow you down once again. And then when we look at other things such as aspartame, it's actually a slight neurotoxin to your body. So the more and more we consume of it, the worse it's going to be for us. Now getting into more performance food here. So slow burning carbohydrates are good. Some examples, sweet potato and rice. Medium chain triglycerides, so that's stuff like our coconut oil. So what that does is it actually bypasses normal fat breakdown, and it goes straight down to the liver. And then from there it's turned into ketones, which the ketones can then be turned into basically fast burning, fast usable, slow burning energy. So typically with our fats, we'll have to break them down over a series of time. But with stuff like our medium chain triglycerides, our coconut oil, we can actually put a scoop of that, let's say, into our smoothie, have that, and then we'll have the energy benefits from that. As opposed to if you were to just have a steak before you went and run, oh, that's not going to digest. So, moving on from that, whey protein is also a decent source to have before you're working out, just because, once again, it's already in a concentrated light form as opposed to you having a bunch of protein and having your whole rest and digest systems working. So common ones that we learn from biology are the rest and digest and the fight and flight. When we get working out, we go into a sympathetic mode, so meaning that we get our heart starts pumping, our blood is more focused towards our muscles and our kind of ways of fight and flight. So we're exerting energy. And then the opposite is rest and digest. Two systems don't work well together. They work well one on the other. Carbohydrates. So there's a list of decent carbohydrates that you can be having before your workouts. And what these will do is they will actually be more slow burning, and then what that will do is longer sustained energy. You won't have crashes, and there'll be less stress on your gut and your intestinal systems. So some examples of that would be white potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, taro roots, and rice. So these are the top 5 carbohydrate sources that can actually lead to better performance when you're exercising, because they break down fast and they also give you slow release energy. So proteins, we already lightly touched on that. There's 20 essential amino acids that we have. Proteins are made up of amino acids. So here is a list of the essential amino acids, and here are the non-essential. The non-essential we're able to synthesize within our own body, and the essential fatty acids are ones that we have to consume ourselves. Animal protein is a really good source of that, because animal protein, such as your fish or your meat, they will actually have all your essential amino acids. So that's all you have to take. So when you start to move towards more of a plant-based diet, you have to find foods that actually contain those essential acids. So there's a little bit more work involved, but if that's what you want to have for your diet, just make sure that you're including all the amino acids, because you have to keep optimal health. So in our body, we have what's called protein turnover. So if we end up working out really hard, what happens? Let's say I work out my upper body hard. We then have to get protein back into our body in order to build up those muscles. So what the body will do is it'll actually start to disassemble proteins in other areas of our body. So what that does is it will take proteins from our legs, they'll desynthesize them so that they can come back up and then rebuild us. Because we can't just stay in a deteriorated state. That would just be like you work out and you never get better. Who would ever work out? So right now, most people, they overconsume protein. All we need to be protein, opposite of deficient. Neutral. Yeah, that's a good one. The average person needs 0.8 grams per kilogram in their body. Most of us, even me, I overconsume protein. But what happens is if you're working out, you will end up using those calories. Protein will break down into eventually sugar, and then it will give you energy within your body. It's a slower breakdown, of course, from carbohydrates, but it does break down. So the athletes, they have to consume more protein because they're just doing more with their bodies. So as you can see, it's an elevated rate of 1.2 to 1.7 grams. Moving on to the next one. So post-exercise, we still need to have those proteins get into our body. And the thing about protein is we can store fat in our body, we can store sugar in our body, but we can't store protein. Protein is our muscles. And then that's basically the only storage site that we have for it. The rest of it is either excreted or broken down into sugar or converted into fat. So when we do this, that's why we have to make sure that we are consuming protein after. Now some people, they have this misconception that it's like, if you're done working out, it's like, I instantly gotta get the scoop of protein in my cup, I gotta drink it now, because I just feel my muscles shrinking. But it's like, no, you have a little bit of time before your body will actually start synthesizing new protein. So you have about 45 to 90 minutes of the optimal range where you should be consuming food after you eat. Or after you work out. Yeah, and then one major thing too, when you're done exercising, one thing that you want to try and avoid is carbs. So some people, they think that you have to have the carbs with the protein so that you can get the protein into the muscle. It's called insulinogenic. But actually, when you're working out, it's almost like your body has an insulin response. It automatically just pumps into the muscles and gives it nutrients. That's the whole sympathetic system. It wants the nutrients to go into the muscles. So when we're done working out, there's something else called EPOC, is excessive post-oxygen consumption. And what this is when you work out really hard after you're done working out, your body is constantly trying to rebuild itself, and you're actually still burning your fat. So if you start to consume quick burning sugars right after, your body will instantly break those down, put it back into your body. As opposed to you can rely on your glycogen or your fat sources to be broken down, and you start losing more weight after you work out. So it's just basically effortless. As long as you're eating healthy after, you're still losing weight, as opposed to going on the bike for another 20 minutes or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, Mitchell talked about, you got into the sympathetic nervous system. So just remember, your nervous system runs, controls, and regulates every part of your body. But your nervous system, man has broken it up into two components. There's the sympathetic and there's the parasympathetic. Now, the sympathetic, fight and flight. So that allows us to run away from bears. You know, it's a good thing. The problem is we create stresses in our world all the time by looking down at phones, by our deadlines. So we create this world where we're almost into an overdrive. So your sympathetic nervous system is my accelerator, okay? I'm in a car, that's my accelerator. Your parasympathetic nervous system, it's your brake, all right? You need a brake and you need a gas pedal if you're driving a car. But in North America, we think we just want gas pedals all the time until you run into a tight curve and you realize there's going to be trouble. So a lot of us are unbalanced that way because we're not doing the yoga, we're not doing the deep breathing, we're not doing the things that are better for us too. It's all sympathetic override. So it's great that you're working out, but there also has to be that downtime instead of the let's forcing our body into a direction all the time. Now, when bones get out of place, as a chiropractor we call that a subluxation. That creates stress. A lot of your parasympathetic is through this area, a lot of your sympathetic is here and it's there. So my job is just to make sure there's no pressure there so the body can naturally heal itself. If there's bones out of place, we put them back into place. We talk about the safety pin cycle. You've got cells that are in your brain, millions of them. And then they have a little wire that comes down called a dendrite, and it attaches to another cell. And that cell could be in your toe, it could be in your kidney, it could be in your heart. So there's this constant communication between the brain. So the brain sends a message to my stomach saying, hey, what is the food that's in there? Is it a steak or is it orange juice? And then the stomach will send a message back to the brain, it's orange juice. So then the brain will say, well, do this. If it's steak, the brain sends a message down saying, then do this. See, there has to be constant communication. And if there's interference in either branch, the signal up or the signal down, your body's not going to work right. And if you have disinformation, if you have mistakes that are being made, that will eventually lead to a disease state. And that's where medicine comes in. Then they'll come in with drugs and surgery. As a chiropractor, we don't need drugs and surgery, we need to correct your lifestyle. And lifestyle is where I want people to start with, because people are stuck in this scientific research world. Lifestyle. What you eat, what you think, whether you exercise or not, that's going to make bigger differences. Going to your doctor once a year for a checkup might be a good idea, but personally I think looking at what you're going to eat for breakfast is a better start. Right? See, I can look at my breakfast and make a good choice or a bad choice. If I make a bad choice for a year, I'll go to my doctor and my doctor will tell me a year later I've made a bad choice. Kind of late, isn't it? We know what a good choice is and what a bad choice is. So I don't go to my doctor for checkups. Last time I was to my doctor, I had a knee problem, so I had to have a knee operation. So that was one of those things that medicine has a place. I needed a referral, I had to see a doctor. But then they tried to give me drugs, and they wanted to give me drugs before the operation and drugs after. And I said, no, no, no. And they said, you could die. And it's like, yeah, I probably won't. Does anyone else die? No. Okay. Is the doctor to wash his hands? Yeah, well, I'm probably not going to get an infection. So that was the conversation. The doctor thought it was funny. You know? He said, yeah, we won't give you anything. We'll see what happens. And I didn't die. You're not going to die. This is what medicine does. They tell you you need a flu shot. We're living under this illusion that people are going to die from measles. You're not going to die from measles. When we were young, none of us died from measles. We had a rash for a week, we had a fever, and then we got lifelong immunity, you know? So people are always telling you things. Don't get caught in the scientific world of, we're going to fix you. Science, glyphosate, that is the active ingredient in Roundup, and it's in your food. And that's a problem. So we need to buy food that doesn't have that in there so your body will work better. You know, in our world, the lies are getting bigger and bigger. And it's undeniable when you look around of what's happening, where they're trying to force people. When they try to force you to put a needle in your body, trust me, it's not about the needle. It's about the government taking away your freedom. All right? So I really want you.
Nuremberg trial.
Yeah, I really want you to think about that, because when you read the inserts of these packages, they clearly say you could die from the needle. They say you could die from the needle, you can get encephalitis. They clearly say that in there, and yet they're trying to force people to do it. Your freedom is your choice, and if we give away our choices, what are they coming after next? What book are you not going to like that I'm reading? I can tell you what it's going to be if you're a Christian, because I think there's some persecution going on in the world, and I don't think I'm being paranoid about that. So I really want you to think about when someone's telling you you have to do something, someone from authority. I want you to question. I want you to do your research. When I say things, I want you to question too. Well, how do you know you're right? Well, I know I'm right because I'm not making you better. God is the healer. I'm taking x-rays. I can prove to you how you're doing. Never take a sleeping pill the same night you take a laxative. See, medicine's constantly giving you pill after pill after pill. And this is one that gets your attention quickly. You say, I know what would happen very quickly. Yes, you would know what would happen. People are mixing drugs all the time. I'm 56 years of age. My last medication in September will be 30 years since I've taken an aspirin. I haven't taken anything. I'm no different than you. I'm just doing slightly different things more regularly than you are. And someday I might need a drug. I'm not denying that. But I got a pretty good streak going. And it's going to be hard if I lose this streak. It's going to be hard to break that streak, because that would mean I had to be like 86 before I could crash it again. So it's like, it's easier just to keep the streak alive. I plan all my sicknesses for the weekend. I don't get sick that often, but I did get sick in Montreal. And I had a fever. I got adjusted 3 times at the seminar in that afternoon. So someone would adjust me, they put the bone back into place, I'd feel good, and then my fever would spike and my bones would... See, when these bones get out of place, people think that's the problem with chiropractic. I say, no, my body moved that bone out of place to protect me. The subluxation, the bone stuck in the wrong spot, isn't the problem. The problem is my body had to do that because I was not in balance. So then they reset it like a breaker, and the breaker popped again. So what do? We reset it. 3 times in one day I got adjusted. The next day I was almost better. But when I get sick, I don't get sick that long. 6.5 years I think it's been since the last time I wasn't able to get into work. People notice when I'm sick. So you know what? I try to make sure I don't get sick that often. So I don't want to be relying on drugs to stay well. This is the nervous system. This is how your spine is supposed to look. Now when bones get out of place, you can see the spine had this beautiful curve and the bones were nice and square. This takes you through 40 years of someone's life. When you get your bones in the wrong spot, now there's so much stress on the spine. The bone is an active living tissue. It will change shape. Now it's like a banana that's curving the wrong way. Your nervous system can't do that. Then you're going to see the bones. This is what is going on in people's spines, and they don't even know. That's why I x-ray you, and that's why I re-x-ray you. And this is why we do this, to see what happens. Because these are the 70-year-olds. But more strikingly, in the last several months, I'm seeing a lot of young people show up. We got some Facebook ads going. You get these young people show up, and they're walking around like this. And their spines look like 40-year-olds 5 or 10 years ago. So they are already sick. This is why we want to get spines checked so that people don't end up like this. Because if this person had been given the option 30, 40 years ago, they might have listened to me. So it's about the chance that they would have listened. Everyone's not going to listen. Trust me. Some of your friends aren't going to believe this or think it's a crazy idea that you go and let someone crack their neck. We're not cracking your neck, we're adjusting your spine to remove interference with the knowledge that God's put a power inside your body and the power heals you. It's not me that heals you. And it's crazy to think that drugs heal you. The power heals you. I can take a dead person and give them drugs, they're still dead, aren't they? They're dead because there's no power left in their body, all right? It's that simple. Power flows through your nervous system. My job is to make sure things flow, and if they flow, your body does great. Ooh, wait, I'm not. It's food time. So the